Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar that is offered to you by the ICF facility on loans to entrepreneurs in the ACP countries. I'm Yasmine Galloul. I am working for Expertise France, and for the ICR facility, I will be your moderator today. We will start with a few questions, a few comments on ground rules. So this webinar first is in French, but you can listen to it in English in Teams. So the session is available in English on Teams. The second point I wanted to mention, this webinar is recorded. So we will be together for an hour and a half. After the welcoming words, I will present to you the ICR facility and the different services provided. And then I will give the floor to Lorraine and Claire Montfeider, who will present the conclusion of a research on potential and challenges of the loan on honors in ACP countries. You will also have the possibility to listen from people that use these loans, people that have received these loans but also offer these loans. They will explain to you their vision of this mechanism, the pros, why they are a political instrument also to give access to loans and to funding to companies, but also why they are more than just a tool. Also, you will have the possibility to ask questions to the member of our panel through the chat box. During the presentation, you can ask questions. We will gather them and then answer at the end of the presentations. Now I will give the floor to Escipión Joaquín Oliveira, Under Secretary General in charge of the Structural Economic Transition Trade Department at the OACPS, and he will give us the welcoming words. Thank you, Escipión. Thank you for inviting me. On behalf of the OACPS, we are really happy to be here today to participate in this presentation. Our Secretary General, Jorge Rebelosi Chiganti, is very interested by the promotion of SMEs. This initiative today by the teams of Expertise Funds and all the ICA facility with the UK teams and also Dutch teams really help promote the competitiveness of our companies. We really think that having access to a fair financing is very difficult. To integrate the global market is very difficult. It is a competitive market, and you need to have interest rates that are not too high. So it's an honor for us to be here today. During the half time, I've understood that the people that were here today are really pioneer in this topic. So it's commendable. So I hope that we will together hope a better future for our children from the market. And I would like to thank the European Union for the work they are doing in our countries for the sustainable development, and also to all the partners working in the ICR facility. I cannot stay for the entire presentations, but I will stay as long as I can, and I hope we will have fruitful discussions. Yasmine I hope you've understood that I am not a French speaker. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much. You always say that, but you have a perfect French. I can see that on the schedule, we also had Miguel Campo Llopis for welcoming words. He is the policy officer at the European Commission called IMPA. However, he cannot attend today. The ICR facility is co-financed, co-founded by the European Union, so we are receiving a lot of support from their teams, and they help us by sharing knowledge with the facility. So it's very important to us to be able to share our good practices and to say that the European Union is supporting this webinar, among other initiatives. So about the ICR facility, I will try to be brief because this is not why we are here today. So the ICR facility wants to reform the world of investment. It's a support facility that has been existing for a year. It's co-founded by the European Union and also by the ACP countries. It's also funded by the German government. And as you can see on the slides, we are working with GIZ, British Council, and Expertise France. So we are a technical expertise facility. We can give 90 days for interventions in order to get a better business environment. We are always trying to have a link with the public-private dialogue and also presentations that help a more inclusive business environment. So these are really the three areas we are working on. So business environment, sustainability, and PPD. We are also trying to help private organizations as well as institutional organizations. We could provide many things such as expertise, but also advice. If you're interested in the facility, please go online to our website. You will find this address on the last slide of the presentation. You can send us a request because we are based on requests. We answer the request from the ACP countries. Now, after this brief presentation, I will now give the floor to Thameur Hemdane and Claire Neuschwander. Thameur is, among other things, because he's been doing a lot of things in his life, the founder of a financing platform for Africa. He is one of the pioneers of SMEs financing, and Claire is working for Red Mangrove Development Advisors, who are trying to have an economic development that is sustainable in ACP countries. Thameur, you have the floor. Thanks, Yasmine, for this presentation. As you said, with Claire, we will try to give you a short presentation on what are loans on honor, to show how they developed in Africa, and also discuss the different advantages for the business environment. Claire, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you to the facility to give us the opportunity to talk about the loan on honor, because it is a very interesting topic. First of all, what are the loan on honor? The loan on honor is a zero interest loan, so it is free because the rate is 0%, but there are also no fees. There are no guarantees, no deposits. So this is one of the problem of the entrepreneur, because they do not have access to certain kind of loans because they do not have the guarantees necessary. And it is also a loan that is granted to entrepreneurs, not companies. In loan on honor, since it's granted to the entrepreneur, it is then reinvested in the company by equities. So it allows to find other sources of investment, such as microfinance. Entrepreneurs lack financing usually, and loan on honor has three advantages. It is very complete, comprehensive tool to create employment, development, and companies. First of all, there's a support system for the entrepreneur before financing and after financing. So this is a guarantee, a technical guarantee for the entrepreneur to be able to reimburse the financing. So it's very important for the people offering these loans. There's also a financial education of the entrepreneur to give him this loan. So we help him understand how to structure the cash flow, and also financial education of the ecosystem. And this leads us to our fourth area, the territorial animation. You have to understand this as such. This is not only local, it can be also at the national level. So in the investment communities, the different stakeholders are from the national level, with supporting stakeholders too. So the people are coming from the same territorial area, and people can understand each other. They speak the same language. They can share ideas. And so we are coming back on the financial education aspect. So we have these four topics, four areas. So there are these loans really help the creation of companies. Thank you, Claire, for this presentation on loan on honors. So loan on honors were created in France in the 80s, 85 rather, thanks to the initiative in France by the Entreprendre Network. And Initiative France will be part of the panel we have today with us. These two major networks, so Entreprendre France and Initiative France, started and developed the loan on honor in Africa, in different countries, Morocco, Tunisia, so North Africa, but also thanks to Initiative France in Burkina Faso, in Ivory Coast, and other countries. You have to mention too, thanks to the study we've had on the Observatory on Loans on Honor, and another study financed by the IIT, that we identified other stakeholders that have offered loan on honors, for example, in Nigeria and Kenya, with several cases of the same scheme. They might not be called loan on honor, but with the same support loan, the same components, and also the part of financial education, territorial aspect, and ecosystem aspect. You have to understand that this scheme, for 40% of the stakeholders, are operators that work only with loan on honors. For example, the operators from Initiative France. And also we have incubators, people that are supporting startups. They use this system to improve their offer of support to the startups. So we've seen two programs, Afrique Innove and Afrikba, that are really trying to push forward this system and develop these practices throughout systems of incubators in the different regions. And we have today Gilles Kounou, one of the beneficiaries of these systems. So he will talk about it later. To give you an idea of the size of this, we have more or less 80 operators covering 17 countries for more than 11 million euros to finance more than 3,000 entrepreneurs. And this created more than 9,000 jobs, or at least maintained them. It's also important to mention the types of projects that have received these loan on honor. We've seen in many countries that it starts from projects on the informal market. So with the loan on honor, we go from the informal sector to the formal sector. So it helps developing the company, the business, with SMEs that can develop into startups with major projects and programs, such as the ones in Morocco, Benin, or other countries. Claire, you have the floor. So, as Thameur was saying, one of the key words to see here is the complementary aspect of the loan on honor. They are complementary to other tools, but also they are very adaptable to other situation, because the different businesses might be very different, but also the geographical aspect might be very different locally, nationally, and we've seen that also that it happens in different regions of the world. The fact that you can use this for individuals or big businesses, it means that it can be used to help employment or to help startups. So very different uses. And Thameur was talking about diaspora, and it is also one of the tools that can be used for this kind of regime. So what about this slide? Here you have the funding continuum. It's quite simplified. To read this, the left arrow is about the volume of financing needed, and the right arrow is the maturity of the company. Often, the entrepreneur starts with small investments, with personal funds, often, or funds coming from their families or grants, and then they can go on and use microcredit or use credit or bank credit. Loan on honor, relatively to its target, can be adapted to the micro level and to the high level, the mature level. So it's very interesting. You can use it at any moment of a business. So how can we use it to create employment and to help the creation of businesses? Often to get loans, it takes time for the different businesses. So when the countries want to get employment, to improve employment, it takes time to see the effects of their measures. With these loans, they can help fast and quickly the employment. And there's also the fact that we make formal the entrepreneurs. We put them in the bank system. And also this creates taxation resources. There's also all the momentum created for entrepreneurship. So little by little, there's really a territorial ecosystem that is put into place with more employment, more companies. So these we create more clients, more providers, and we also educate the financial system at the of the local ecosystems. So as you might have understood, Loan on Honor is a comprehensive tool. It can adapt to the different contexts in the emerging countries, developing countries. However, it's not always authorized. Today we have public authorities with us. We have institutions with us that could decide to integrate this in their policies for employment, for companies. So which are the different elements that should be taken into account? We will discuss this with our panelists, but we wanted to really highlight 3 areas that are major, that are crucial to us. First of all, as a financial tool, the loan on honor can be a bit, can lack transparency. Should it be regular or not? So authorities must have a way to take a stand for this loan. So this financial tool can allow, with a minimal legal framework, to develop ecosystem with a sufficient activity to really reach its potential. Second point, as Claire said earlier, the zero rate loan should not imply hidden costs or hidden fees. So the operators have to find a solution to fund these operations. To do so, they have to be integrated in the ecosystem with the financial actors, the national actors. You have to give value to the impact of the loan on honor, the creation of employment, of jobs, because creating jobs is creating wealth. So you really have to highlight the positive aspects of loan on honors. So it's very important during the first years to really highlight the different advantages to achieve the targets. And also you have to support the growth, the scale up of the different actors for them to be able to achieve a size that is sustainable for them. Last point, it is a comprehensive system, and often we only talk about the financial aspect of it. We only talk about the fact that it is a zero interest loan. However, it is a comprehensive system, and to be implemented in a system, you have to do education, prevention, and act on the different development levels for them to develop adequately and be used by professional actors. Really, you have to promote good practices. in terms of being in the legal framework, but also in terms of the financial aspects, and we will discuss about the other points. Yasmine, you have the floor to start the roundtable discussion. Thank you very much, Thameur, for this very interesting presentation for our listeners, for our audience. You will see in the chat box a link to download the presentations of today, the PowerPoint presentations, so you can have and use it from there. So now we will switch to the roundtable part of this webinar. Our first speaker is Bruno Casalan. He is director of the international development at Initiative France. Initiative France, as Thameur said, is the first association group that of companies creation and financing. So they are really leading the loan on honor in France for 10 years now. Initiatives has been launched in Africa. There are about 20 as of now in the continent, and this represented more than 350 companies supported in 2020. We also have Mohamed Elmouden, president of the association initiative Sous Moussa in Morocco, which is the first platform of this type in on the continent. Bruno, you have more or less 10 minutes, and it will be the same for all the speakers. In the presentation made by Thameur and Claire, we've seen that the loan on honor, because they gather people around the table or around the same discussion, creates positive impacts. So could you give us examples of the positive impacts, for example, in your network? Thank you. Thank you for giving us the floor and giving us the possibility to intervene during this roundtable. We want to share our experience. It's a real pleasure for us to discuss it from the point of view of Initiative France, which is really an historical actor of loan on honor in France, with more than 22,000 loans each year and more than 50,000 jobs created thanks to this network. As a preliminary word, we have to say that these results are really significant right now, but they are based on a territorial approach. We need trust, we need solidarity. So really, this is all based on a humanist approach, an association, organization approach with solidarity, giving services, providing services that help people creating their companies. So another element that is very important is to have equities and to be integrated in the local ecosystem. So this is seen today by a governance at the local level that is really representative of the local ecosystem, with entrepreneurship, with public actors, private actors, bank system. All these actors, all these stakeholders are gathered together to offer this continuum of financial services for the young entrepreneurs and of the same territory. So there is really this territorial component.
So whenever a decision is made, the idea is to have a match between the project holder and the support to this project and the territory dimension, because the operators know the territory, they know the market, they know the environment, they know the existing structuring project. So this knowledge of the territory is also key success factors in the decision making. So this is a very important aspect. And there's no sound anymore. The interpreter is sorry, but the sound has gone. You can't hear the speaker anymore. Okay, the sound is back. So today we have a kind of support that aims at helping the entrepreneur to develop and to make his project a success story. We have various sectors that are working with the Initiative France. They meet regularly, and this creates informal relationships in the local ecosystem in order to generate economic development projects or infrastructure projects, because you have various stakeholders like industries, like businesses, local authorities, and all this can contribute to the economic development of the territory. So these are areas and meetings that are very fruitful and that can contribute to some corporations. Very often entrepreneurs that come and see us are people who are unemployed, so their projects are generating jobs. There is also a contribution to the emergence of local economic fabric. There's also the emergence of some local expertise thanks to this kind of loan scheme. We try to provide the best possible support to young entrepreneurs. As I told you, we've been developing this scheme for 35 years in France. For 10 years now, and I will leave the floor to Mohamed in a couple of minutes to let him share his experience, because he's the flagship of our concept at the international level. So, as I said, we are now developing the same activities, or we've been developing the same activities in other countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Tunisia, more recently in Ivory Coast and Chad. And we are currently developing projects in Cameroon, Senegal, and in Mauritania. What is important in this approach is that the initial steps of our international development were supported by local French authorities as part of a decentralized support. That's how Mohamed could benefit from our support. In Burkina and in Morocco, the local situation drew the attention of external partners, namely AFD, the French Development Agency, which over the last 10 years provided support to ensure that our scheme or loan on trust scheme could be further developed and could be exported as a French know-how, as a French expertise tool. So AFD provided funding for our technical assistance, for instance, also funded some pilot projects in some countries. And this was a determining factor because the support provided by the French Development Agency and is an institutional one and a very powerful one as well, because we had some problems with the regulatory framework, also on the professionalization of local operators, and by funding an observatory of donors, there was this very strong institutional support. So I would like to really thank AFD for their help, their support. This is quite a unique partnership that we've clinched with them for 10 years now. And now we'll give the floor to Mohamed if you agree. Yes, please go ahead. So you will introduce now your association, Initiative SUS. Well, we are operating under the model developed by Initiative France, and we try to, we've contributed to the creation of 800 businesses, which generated more than 3,000 jobs in the SUS region. So we did a copy-paste of the, well, we did not really have a copy-paste of the Initiative France model. We had to adjust it to our own social and economic environment to make it a success story, because we know that all networks that are part of Initiative France do not work in the same way. They are not applying exactly the same schemes, so they too have to adjust the initial model. So what is important with this loan on trust or loan of honor, if you want, is that you don't need any collateral, and it's a zero interest rate. It is also part of a public-private partnership, so the various stakeholders can sit at the same table. All the structures, all the public administrations and private businesses which can contribute to entrepreneurship can sit at the same table and work together. Everyone contributes whatever it can to the project. For instance, training institution will provide training schemes. We will provide funding. We also signed up some partnerships with banks for co-financing schemes. So we are working with CCG and with another bank. So we have a partnership with CCG because their role is to provide a guarantee. And we also are working with a SUS-MESA partnership. All this is quite important because we are providing support to the regional council as well as to other local authorities when it comes to try and support local job creation initiatives, young entrepreneurship. So we can play a very key role in this continuum. In fact, the whole scheme is a success because we also provide support and advice to regional authorities when it comes to implementing their programs for entrepreneurship. The Regional Council, for instance, wanted to develop the movie industry in our region, in the region of Ouarzade more specifically. There was already quite a substantial movie industry there, but there was a need to further support its development. So a special fund was set up for young project holders. And so we also had to contribute to the development of this industrial ecosystem. The tourism industry in the region was also highly dependent to one single source of revenue, namely the seaside resorts, and there was a willingness to diversify the sources of revenue, the source of income, and that's why we contribute to the development of rural tourism as well. And so another special fund was set up to contribute to the emergence of this rural tourism, whereby some rural accommodation structures could be funded, as well as some touristic sites could be developed. And so this was put in place with our help as part of a general development plan. even for women, because initially there were only 12% of female project holders, and we wanted to reach the French average, which is 27% of female project holders. At least that is the latest figures that the French gave me. So we have set up another special fund for female project holders, and we too have moved up from 12 to 27% of female project holders. So we have now reached the same number as the French average. The future area of work will be green projects. And again, as you might guess, a special fund is put in place together with the Ministry for Environment, one of our major partners. So a special fund is now in place for green economy or environment-oriented businesses. So we also try to facilitate all the procedures. As you might guess, there is a lot of red tape when it comes to either create a company, a business, or when it comes to receiving funds. So we have set up those special funds with very clear, crystal clear criteria, and that's a good way to support the development of new businesses. We try to be as transparent as possible to ensure that there is no criticism on what we do. We have an auditor which monitors everything we do and who also provides some piece of advice to make sure that we act in full transparency. One of our current strengths is that, as Bruno said, we contribute to the emergence of African sub-Saharan platforms for exchange of practices, for the sharing of views, sharing of ideas. And so we contribute to the emergence of those platforms across Africa. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mohammed. I'm pretty sure that what you said was quite an eye-opener for many of our listeners. And so we see that there is always a need to adapt and to adjust to the local environment and local circumstances. You have already hinted at CCG. We will have somebody from CCG later on. But now I would like to give the floor to Gilles Kounou, who is the director of OPENSI in Benin, who has created a startup that it operates in e-health and who is a beneficiary of a loan on trust. So, Gilles, could you briefly introduce the activity of your business and also tell us why you resorted to a loan on trust, under which circumstances, and to what extent this loan helped you develop your business? Good afternoon, Yasmine. Good afternoon to all of you. Let me first thank ICR for inviting me to share my experience with the loan on trust from the point of view of a startup. And this point of view, this experience could be quite different from that of an investor's experience. As you said, my startup is an e-health business, which was set up in 2018, and that could benefit from a loan of honor or loan on trust. So my startup, as I said, operates in the field of e-health, and the main aim is to bring patients closer to the hospital sector, overcoming such difficulties like access to reliable information, like finding a specialist or a health expert in a country, Benin, where there is only 1,000 practitioners for 2 million inhabitants, and only 30% of those 1,000 are specialists. And most of those specialists work for private health centers in 2 or 3 large cities, which all are in the southern part of the country. So that was the context against which Assurance Médicale was created. So we also contribute to making sure that patients don't have to go several times to the hospital to practitioner before getting an appointment or getting health services. There's also the possibility that is given through e-health services for practitioners to monitor their patients. They don't have to convene them, so patients don't have to travel to go and see their practitioner. The e-health services makes it easy, finally, to have access to your practitioner and to get the necessary medical care. Under what circumstances could you benefit from a loan on trust, and how have you made use of it to develop your business? In fact, Biomedical is a spin-off. Initially, it was part of a wider platform. So we knew that we could reckon on some cash flow to develop all the functionalities that we were looking for. Yet there was a need for a one-shot huge investment to quickly operationalize our platform. Because one of the usual problems that you have with platforms is the chicken and egg story, you know, because we had to finance the acquisition of the IT tools, and at the same time to finance the venues and all the equipment as well. So we were in need of a big amount of money, but as a one shot. And the good news with this loan on trust is that we could really refund that amount over a longer period of time. So it was very interesting in the sense that it gave us the means to invest quickly and massively, which was absolutely key to set up this IT platform. You know that at the beginning of such an endeavor, you are always in need of big amounts of money. Again, the idea was to make sure that we could rely on a sufficient number of health professionals. So we have more than 400 health professionals who are working for us now. And at the same time, we had to make sure that we would have enough patients to give work to those health professionals. The money made it possible also to offer an IT platform right away to the professionals and to explain that this platform would act as a channel between them and their patients. So that was how the money was used. Of course, one of the main advantages of this kind of loan and trust scheme is that you don't have to provide any collateral, which would be the case with any other bank loan. This is also money that you receive, but not just like that. It is money that is given to you together with support, with some technical assistance, with expertise that you can that you can rely on at any point in time. So it's not as if you were left alone with your money. You really have a full-fledged kind of support framework that goes together with the loan. Thank you for that. So the takeaway is that the loan and trust was an important tool for you to invest and to get access to the market, to get access to the clients and to the health professionals. And it was also an important leverage to get access to other sources of funding afterwards. So thank you very much, Gilles, for sharing your experience with us. I will now give the floor to Omar Idrissi Amraoui, who is head of the Investment Fund Department at the Moroccan Central Guarantee Fund, CCG. CCG is a Moroccan public institution, which is a credit institution, and one of its aims is to give an impulse to private initiative by fostering the modernization, the creation of businesses. So Omar, could you explain us how CCG has made use of the loan of trust and has integrated it in a wide business support program, and more particularly, what are the working conditions of this loan on trust? Well, thank you for this brief introduction. Indeed, CCG is the financial arm of the state. We are there to provide momentum to the private sector. Our role is to foster access to funding for businesses. So we have three main financing mechanisms: guarantee, co-financing, and the mobile financing. In 2014, we launched the first guarantee mechanism to support not-for-profit organizations that can distribute loan on trusts. And so associations that help young project holders in the setting up of their own businesses. And with that scheme, up to 70% of the portfolio of those loan on trust associations could be covered. And today we have two partners, including the Initiative SUSMAS. That was in 2014. In 2017, as part of the willingness to support startups in the country, the state asked us to create the State Invest program. This is a mechanism that is meant to support the creation of startups, and that goes together with a loan system. The difference between the first and the second mechanism is that CCG can directly make use of loans of honor in support of the creation of new businesses. So the loan of honor, or the loan of trust, is part of a series of instruments, including including various mechanisms, support by business angels, that includes funding for the growth and development of businesses through repayable advances and also through crowdfunding with a very competitive interest rate. The specificity of InnovStart, this mechanism, is that it is a funding mechanism using the zero interest rate schemes, the famous loan on trust, and this is distributed through partners. In other words, the target are young entrepreneurs who are currently developing their own projects. So they are in the pre-start phase, and they are in need of a specific form of support to help them mature their project and make sure that they create their business in the right circumstances. So we act in partnership with ecosystem support structures, incubators, or business clusters, the aim of which is to provide this support to young businessmen. And we can finance up to 500 billion in loan on trust to make sure that those startups reach a sufficient level of maturity to get their own funding from investment funds and through other equity providers. So I hope I was clear. We are in a funding continuum. We are part of a continuum. So we are part of a funding continuum, and the phone rings again. So we are in a financing continuum, and the loan on trust makes it possible for startups to get access to loans and to benefit from a pre-existing scheme. So the loan on trust is granted by our partners, labeled partners, who will also make sure that they get the money back. In practical terms, what does that mean? Well, from a technical point of view, CCG had to make a call for interest to select its partners. So there is a schedule of terms and conditions with a notation grid. CCG has collected many applications, and those support structures were assessed on the basis of their resources, the kind of support they were prepared to offer, the kind of expertise they could offer, and also on the basis of their financial viability. We also identified those who had some experience in funding, who had already managed funds in the past for third parties, and who already, we audited their information systems as well to ensure that they were indeed able to manage funding and to manage the repayment of loans. From there, we granted two types of label. So one label for those partners which have a program, which have the necessary prerequisites to be a CCG partner. And we also have a second premium label for those organizations that have sufficient tools and sufficient equipment to generate loan on trusts. So that is the category 2. The premium category is called the category 2. So, and we have only 4 structures that are now able to grant such loan on trusts. So this premium label is only granted for partner organizations only.
So they allow them to really reach the equity or to have the funds necessary. But it has to be dealt with in the right conditions. So really, they did not always have the possibility to use them. Thank you. Thank you, Omar. So based on what you've just said, the loan on honor is really in a continuum of financing, and it helps linking the grants to the access to investment funds or banking loans, more conventional banking loans. So thank you, Omar. We will now give the floor to Virginie Lucas, who is project team leader and entrepreneurship referent in the Education, Vocational Training and Employment Department at the AFD. I don't know if I have to present you what the AFD is. It is a French institution in charge of financing. It is present in more than 110 countries. So Virginie, you will present us the point of view of a loaner. So how AFD is helping support loans and how can it help policies? Thank you, Yasmine. Thank you to the facility to allow us to show our strategy in this domain. Historically, AFD has been working on loan of honor for more than 10 years. I think it started in 2011 in Tunisia after the revolution because we wanted to support the initiatives of the civil society in favor of the economic growth in the south of Tunisia. AFD as a partner is working on two ways with loan on honors by actors that are trying to launch these requests for financing, for example, by structuring the third facts such as Initiative France in many countries, Morocco, Burkina Faso, Mali, but also as an operator on other projects because we and many operators have developed an engineering way of doing things that is totally implementable to other targets, other territories. So really by following the situation, the context of the region, of the entrepreneurs really, and the population on the ground. So for example, there's the case of the different green companies that can have a targeted approach. So we've had different implementation of actions. We are working also on the public policies and products by the state, and also with partnerships that are more private. So I can give you two examples, for example, on which we have worked. So we are working on a contract with Ivory Coast on the development of an employment service for the youth. So it was interesting to us to promote this experience, this concept of loan on honor as a way of supporting job creation and company creation. So we have offered a scheme to the Ivory Coast government to develop this on 3 pillars in 3 regions of Ivory Coast. Also, 2 more will be implemented soon. And we are always analyzing the territories, the local systems, financing systems, the local entrepreneurship, also to be in the context and mobilize the economy actors in the region. So we can help support these entrepreneurs who without guarantees wouldn't have access to the financial system. Of course, the objective is to help them get to the microfinance and the banking system by really accompanying them. As for Chad, it's another country with a different profile, a different system. At its beginning, there we have a partnership with an association, data manager. This association, this organization is a group of public actors and financing actors, the employment agency, for example, but also other representatives of the professional organizations. So the idea was to have a common culture of what is entrepreneurship and provide an offer that was adapted to the needs. It was started in 2015. There was no dedicated tool at the time. And we realized that it was impossible to mobilize the financial system in Chad. So the idea was to implement the loan on honor to have a step relate to access to the creation of activity and to show that an activity could work. It was implemented in 2020. It's 20 million euros that will help finance a lot of entrepreneurs. It will also help change the practices on the market over there. As a loaner, we've highlighted some difficulties in the study we showed. For example, there is the compatibility with the legal issues. You have to put a regulatory framework that is not the same as for the banking and financial system, because this tool doesn't have the same advantages. This tool is a public policy tool, not a financial tool. It's very important to understand that. Because if you do not, you really are not looking at it the right way. And in France, it has its own system. It also makes you wonder about your economic system. We know that at more than 85% of the cases, it is reimbursed, and it is also reusable. But the cost linked to the support, to awareness raising campaigns, and so on, are not covered. So it's a concern. So one of the challenges of the partnerships and the different ecosystems we are working on. For example, the Employment for Youth Agency could support and cover these costs because it is a way to improve employment, and so the Ivory Coast government could decide to support the costs of these soft skills. In the Sahelian region, the resources are more limited, and thus the partnerships with the banking system and the financial system should be taken to have a group of projects that are fundable by this system, and maybe contemplate what has been done in France. In France, many banks have branches in the countries I've just talked about, so it could be an exchange between these banks. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you. To build up on what you just said, it's a bit alike to what Omar said. When projects have been financed by loan on honor, then they can access to the banking system, the investment funds, the trust funds. So thank you very much for this contribution. It was very interesting. You approached many topics. Now we will go to our Q&A session. So, to the audience, you can ask your question via the chat box. It is on the top right side of your screen. While you are asking your question, they can be for the roundtable members, but also to the initial speakers, the first speakers. In the documents window of GoToWebinar, you now have the slides of the presentation that are available both in French and English. You can download them, and also you have access to the presentation document of the ICR facility. So we will maybe start with a very basic question, if you agree. What is the average amount of loan of honor granted on the African continent? I don't know who would be the best to answer this. Maybe Virginie or Bruno or Mohamed? I don't know, with the Moroccan example. So we have only the figures for the initiative platforms created abroad. So for the consolidated results in a particular year, of course, because you know that the activity has been impacted by the health crisis. Usually we have events that have a good impact on activity. Well, for the figures, for the 16 platforms abroad, we have more or less 400 loan on honors, and they are averaging 3,500 euros. In Tunisia, we have 3,300 euros on average, but it is a very active system with SMEs, so we can easily help these projects. However, where this system is not really developed or interested by this system, we have loans of around 400 euros. So it really depends on each country. In Senegal, for example, it's very early. It's on craftsmanship's work and so on. And we are at around 200 euros on average, while in Ivory Coast, we are at around 3,200 euros, and in Kenya, 6,000. So For example, in Ouagadougou, we've had important project with a lot of funding coming afterwards. So for these 385 loan on honor, it represents 1,250,000 euros in 2020. 142 of the beneficiaries are women, and it created 1,300 jobs.
That was in short, and maybe that Omar has some further details to give. Well, before giving some information, maybe let Omar give some insights about the reality on the ground. Thank you, Thameur. As far as CCSG is concerned, we should draw a distinction between the kind of targets. For mainstream entrepreneurship, the amount of loans are close to the figures given by Mohammed, i.e. 10,000 euros per business. But apart from that, we are working and financing entrepreneurs whose aim is to be part of the mainstream society and to find a place in the society. If you look now at startups, the amounts there are much bigger because, as I told you, we are financing innovation, sometimes IT platforms, for instance, which are in need of massive marketing and communication tools. So the budget is hitting the fan. Very often we are talking about 50,000 euros per project, and even this amount is insufficient. And we have some entrepreneurs who are funding most of their communication campaign needs to give visibility to their platforms on medias, social medias, for instance. So you really have to draw a distinction between the type of target businesses. To complement what Omar and Bruno just said, to give an average per country or on the continent is not representative of any meaningful analysis. In fact, what I'm hearing is that it all depends on the target and on the social and economic context in each country. Even in Tunisia, the Réseau Initiative grants on average between 3,000 and 5,000 euros per project. But if you take the Réseau Entreprendre in Tunisia, which is targeting main seaside resorts or main cities and not so much rural areas or rural cities, there you will see that the average is in the vicinity of 10,000, 12,000 euros per project. And I agree with Omar on the specificity of startups. These are often structures with very high ambitions and high financial needs, especially during the 3-4 first years. And therefore they're in need of much bigger amounts, on average between 15 and 30,000 euros, and as loan on trust. Thank you, Thameur. A question in the chat is, what is the role of the loan on trust in the making and shaping of businesses? would it be possible for people who have non-formal businesses to have access to loan on trust? And is loan on trust a means to shift from the informal to the formal sector? Could somebody answer that? Please raise your hand. Mohammed, the floor is yours. In our case, the informal sector is quite important in the national economy, and so we need to see this as a target to try and help people to shift from the informal to the formal sector, because on the informal sector they have no visibility, and so it is impossible for the state, for instance, to implement any development scheme for the informal sector because there is a lack of visibility. So our role is precisely to try and prompt informal businessmen and women to put something in place to shift from this informal to the formal sector. And this means that we need to provide not just money, but also some support with red tape. So the real question is how to make sure that we can remain in the same scale, both in the formal and informal sectors, because you don't have large companies in the informal sector. You only have a micro or small enterprises. You don't have large scale businesses there. And so it is quite difficult for those small businesses to benefit from the state schemes. Only formal businesses can. And sometimes you have some entrepreneurs who are operating in the informal sector, and they come and see us, and they ask us to how they can register as a business, for instance, just to become eligible for public funding. And sometimes we help them move and shift from the informal to the formal sector, and they don't get the public funding, and then they are furious, and they come and blame us, saying, you've made us change and the business and move from this informal to the formal sector, and at the end of the day, that's for nothing, because we don't see any change. We don't get any money for that. So it's quite difficult for them to understand. And this is a problem that we have with some project holders. So most of our project holders were in the informal sector. Now they are part of the formal sector, which is good news. So this is a role that we are very proud to play. Thank you, Mohammed, for this example. Thameur, if you don't mind, I will move to another question so that we can deal with more topics. Another question that is asked in the chat is, what kind of support do receive loan on beneficiaries? And so I could turn to Ibrisi to ask him what kind of support he received with his loan on trust, and what were the benefits for his company. Thank you for that question. In our specific case, we were part of a program which aimed at speeding up the implementation of our project. And we were part of a program together with many other startups that were at the same level of development. We were all at the beginning of the launching of our platform, And the loan on trust, we were selected by the program precisely because we had some marketing issues. So the program not only provided a structuring framework and helped us become eligible to loans on trust, but it also gave us some support in terms of market analysis, in terms of advice, expertise, development of strategies, market approach on the market that we had identified. So we could benefit from a lot of training schemes that helped us develop our strategic work to acquire a customer base. We were also helped in recruiting the necessary staff for the platform as well. So we were part of the so-called Tri-Styles support program. And we were about 10 to 20 businesses who could benefit from this support, which was mainly focused on marketing. Thank you. So you benefited from a quite rich support. So we will be brief because we will close this webinar in 3 minutes. Question that is often put to us in this context is, how can you explain the very high level of reimbursement rates, given the fact that there are no collaterals, that it is a loan on trust? How can you explain that so many people actually reimburse their loans and that there is such a low rate of default? Well, of course, there is this issue of trust, of honor, but beyond that, there is support, there is engagement, there is also the environment of the entrepreneur that is looked at. So maybe all this contributes to the full reimbursement. We are not just talking about a financial instrument. It's not just a matter of lending money to someone for economic purposes. We are talking about a much broader approach that includes money, but also support, that also includes mutual respect, things like that. So Omar might maybe add some further comments. Beyond this support component, which plays an important role in the making, shaping, and success of any project, and this is a role played by microcredit and support bodies, there is also the very nature of the loan on trust. In fact, this mechanism often plays the role of a bridge financing mechanism. Very often, the loan of trust is a means to get access to other forms of formal funding afterwards. As Mr. Mohamed Hemdane rightfully said, the SUS-MESA funding is often granted by loan on trust together with banks. Under Fund Invest, the money is meant to get access to a secondary stage where you will have access to formal banking. So although we don't have sufficient data to know exactly what is the level of reimbursement, we can say that this refunding is almost guaranteed, because the loan on trust in itself is triggering a movement that prompts the entrepreneur to look for formal loans from the formal banking sector afterwards. And the interpreter is sorry, but the sound is gone again.
And in this committee, we received the entrepreneur, and the people who decide on the financing are the people who will give the money at the end of the day. So this money from the association is really there, and people around the table, they know the entrepreneur, they know where they live, they know their history. So there's really some social control, and it is very important because we have this work upfront, and this allows us to guarantee the reimbursement of the project and the success rate also. By the way, we also have a follow-up that is done on a regular basis. We are trying really to follow up on the different projects. If someone doesn't reimburse, this person will be blacklisted in a way on our territory. So we have some measures of controlling this. And of course, there is the solidarity dimension of this. If you share, if you loan money to someone, lend money to someone, and you get reimbursed, you can then lend it to someone else. So there really is this solidarity aspect of it. And when someone, an entrepreneur, discusses his project and asks for a financing, there's really a short period of time. The person you talk to, you pitch your project to, is the one who pays you, who gives you the loan. So this is really a short circuit, a short process, and this really changes how people react to it. And we have very good recovering rates, and also what is important to us is the fact that the sustainability of the companies we fund is really high. Thank you very much for this presentation. The loan on honor is not only a financial tool, it is also a tool to give access to other financial tools and also have a more sustainable company and create support for jobs creation and company support. We have to stop here. I'm really, really sorry. I know there are many questions in the chat box on entrepreneurship of women, on loan and honor, and Islam, and so on. And many approaches are discussed with the branches approach. However, we will not be able to answer all of this, but this gives me the opportunity to link with my last comment. All the questions will be answered during the individual sessions that the ICR facility is offering for the public organization or private organization from the ACP countries. Can we go to the next slide? Next one, please. Thank you. So we have clinics. These are individual support sessions for public or private actor based in an ACP country. You can contact us at info at icr-facility.eu, and there you can, during this session, you can, for 2 hours more or less, discuss with Thameur or Claire. They will answer your questions, the questions maybe we haven't answered today, and also give you personalized advice. You can also make your questions until the 25th of March, so don't hesitate. We are there for this type of work. This is part of these webinars. And also, we have 2 more webinars coming up in the weeks to come. One on the finance for companies. The first one will be in English, the 25th of March, on mobilizing international finance to stimulate investment into climate change adaptation. So it will be in the afternoon of the 25th of March, and also on the 22nd of April, Startup Act on innovative finance series. So thank you very much to all the speakers, the panelists, for the quality of your presentations. We've had great exchanges today. It's always a pity to have to stop these discussions, but you can keep discussing it in other forums. The report is being worked on. It will be available in the 2 weeks or 3 weeks to come, and it will be a summary of these exchanges. Thank you to all the participants, to the audience. I would like to ask you to answer this short poll about the interest you've had in this webinar. I hope it's been very interesting for you, and I hope you will attend other events by our facility. Thank you very much, and goodbye.